Well, I was born in a small island in the Caribbean called St. Vincent, and I grew up in Barbados, and then I came to the Bahamas the last 29 years, but I was a Muslim for the past 33 years. When I first became Muslim, I became Muslim under the Sunni Mata. Okay. And that was like 33 years ago. Wow. And then I became Shia 28 years ago, going 29 anyway. Well, I did elementary and part of high school there. And I went to Barbados. I grew up there, but finished my education in the Bahamas. I was an Anglican. My family is Anglicans. But at the age of 11, I was always challenging about, how could God be three? My parents was like, what's wrong with you? But I was always questioning who Allah was. And when I was like around 18, 19, I met this Muslim brother while I was living in Barbados, and he's who introduced me to Islam, so I became Muslim. I was involved in things like the Black Power movement and, anything to do with freedom and, that kind of stuff. And when I became Muslim, my family didn't like that at all, so, I was like the black sheep of the family, still is, because now I'm Shia. And I just wanted to know how three is one, because if Allah is the creator of Jesus, now how could Jesus and the Spirit be God when God is the creator of both the Spirit and Jesus? But I did not know anything about Islam then. It was just a question in my mind at 11. Sure. So, because of my own search, I wanted to know. That is why it was so easy for me to accept Islam when I was introduced to Islam. We grew up where we were growing up, well, most of my family, they're into Christianity, whether it's Baptist or, secular, like the Methodist, Anglican, Catholic. But we were always dealing with God in our family, our whole immediate home and all that. So we always have like a godly background. So it was easy for me to accept Islam because of that, because of the moral upbringing we had and the sense of knowing that there is a God. So for me, it was easy. We didn't have much Muslims around us. In Barbados, there are a Muslim community which is predominantly Indian. When I first knew, but there wasn't much black people. And when the handful of black people that I knew who introduced me to Islam, we came into Islam because there was a group that came to Barbados from the States that called themselves the Islamic Party. So we became part of that. Yeah, I never really see Islam as anybody's religion. It was just everybody had their own type of religion that they were practicing in Barbados. So I really didn't see it as a Indian religion or black people religion or whatever. It's just that when the brothers started talking to me about Islam, and I started doing my own research, I realized it was the truth, and this is what I wanted to do, and then I do it, so it was no part of any racial divide or any Pacific of anything. I think because with my background, I did a lot of reading, in those days you read a lot about the Middle East, you read about their politics, their religion, but I never got it in the sense that it belonged to one group of people. So it didn't really affect me in that sense. I just see it as, okay, this is Islam and this is sound good, This is what I've been looking for. Allah is the only God and He's the creator of all things, so this makes sense. And that was it. It's amazing because, I was going to high school, 9.5, 10 years old, I was in high school. And we had a teacher who was into what you call the Black Power movement, and he would teach us all these things about consciousness and, freedom and rights, because when we do our history on blacks, we always see black people as people who unintelligent, you know, they don't know anything, they were always slaves and all that. So, you know, he will teach us this history about black people. So then I started reading about Haley and, you know, roots, reading the book on roots, and, you know, we started doing a lot of history on black people. And then Louis Farrakhan came to Barbados and was giving his speech. And then I went to that, and, you know, although it was not correct Islam, but still it was something to do with the consciousness of the black man. So, you know, I was always attracted to that kind of stuff. So, didn't get involved in the politics. I mean, I had my own views about politics, but I was more trying to get to know who I am as a person, what was my role as a Muslim woman, and stuff like that. So I was always seeking and trying to find that side of me, then trying to get involved with that other side. So I got married to a Bahamian brother, and then I moved to the Bahamas. And at that time, it was like in the peak of the early stage of the revolution in Iran. And so we would come to all the conferences in Canada. And, you know, we started developing, you know, more about ourselves, what our purpose here, who we are, Shias, and all that. And then I went to the Hausa in Medina, New York, for a while as well. And I didn't go on to Iran. Because I was married, I had 2 young daughters, so I went back to the Bahamas and still developed myself. I went back to college as well. I became a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I work in the neonatal intensive care. That's my specialty now. But I still get involved in the conferences. Regardless of where conferences and I have the time, I will jump on a plane and I'll be there. And I stay in contact with all the sisters, regardless of which side of the world they are, to keep that spirit going, because I have no one there really there isn't 2 other sisters there, but I like to be involved in things. I like to know things. I like to learn things, because I have my children and now my grandchildren now to educate. And like I told the Alams last night, we need to have people visit us every so often for us to know, well, you know, if we are staying on the correct path of the Hubei. I was going to a dance practice, actually, where they had a little center, because the big mosque is right next to where I go and dance, you know. I did African ballet those days. And as I was going to the meeting, the brother approached me, and you know, we started talking, and, you know, he told me if I ever heard about Islam, and I said, what is Islam? And, you know, he invited me to come to the center. So I will go, but I was still in, like, my dancing, so I'll still go to dance. And then, you know, as I get to know more about Islam, I realize that, you know, I need to spend time learning about who Allah is. And I got converted the following year. Well, I mean, it's not that I wasn't sure, but I still wanted to have the opportunity to, like we say, finish up doing what you're doing before you make a commitment. Sure. We'll get books, you know, he will give me books, the basic books that I could learn about Tawheed and Furudin and stuff like that, how to make wudu, why women wear hijab, you know, stuff like that. They have, you know, all the Indians, born Muslim, all that, they had their 2 mosques, they had their madrasas and everything. We now, from the native, like the black people in Barbados who are reverts to Islam, you know, it was a handful of us. Prior to that, I was what you call a Rastafarism. So I was wearing the long clothes, wrapping the head, so, you know, this one is only dropping it in front, so it was not really much of a transition for me. You know, they took Shahada with them, and then I started practicing Islam fully. And then a year after that, the Islamic Party, a sect of them moved to Barbados. They actually, I think, originated from Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. Yeah, and they came to Barbados, and I met them through the same brother who introduced me to Islam. Okay. And I went with them, and then we were living in Jamal, you know. We had this big house, and, you know, all the reverts, we were living in Jamal different places, but we had a community going. Because my life is different than a lot of people because my mom died when I was 11. My father was not with us, so we were practically independent. My older siblings, you know, helped raise the younger ones, so we were actually independent. Right. So I could have made my own decision. I didn't have like parents around me who influenced my decision and how I want to live my life. So I was basically on my own. Right. So I stayed in Barbados. My husband came to Barbados on a conference. You know, at that time, Libya used to sponsor a lot of conferences in the Caribbean. We all, you know, well, some of the brothers married sisters now in the community. I was the only single one. Really? And we started going to the local center that was run by some Pakistanis that lived in Barbados, called the Islamic Center in Christchurch. So we started functioning there. We started going there. And from there, that's how I heard about the conference, and that's how I got involved in getting married to my husband. But not that I met him personally. There's another Muslim sister. I couldn't make it to the conference. She's the one who kind of introduced us. It is in discussion. While they were at the conference, they were talking about marriage. And they asked if any single sisters are in Barbados. And she mentioned me. And he started communicating. And 6 months later, he asked me to marry him. And we've been married for 29 years. Yes, they had an established community there, so that my husband belonged to. So when I went over to get married, we stayed in that community. One of the brothers went to Iran to one of their celebrations. You know, they used to have the yearly celebration for the revolution, and was invited. So he went, and then he came back, and he told us about Shiism. He brought the books. And half of us became Shias, and the other half, yes. Which we didn't have much people still. You know, he's talking about a handful of blacks, but in the Bahamas they're a bit more economically sound than the other Caribbean regions, so they could afford a center. So, you know, the brothers, they had a center there, and what they do, they marry the foreign sisters because, for some reason, Bahamians are very difficult to convert to Islam. We weren't even in contact with anyone when we made that decision. The brother came back and he just talked about what happened. You know, he met Imam Khomeini and, you know, these different, and I think the funny thing about it is that we had some of the same books in our library, in our center. We didn't even know it was anything to do with the Ahlul Bayt. We just know they are Islamic books and you read them, you know. We didn't even know they had a sect called Shia. You know, we just think everybody were Muslims. They were upset, you know. They banned us from the center. Really? Yep, up to this day. You know, we don't go to the center at all. You know, and now they now have a mosque, a full mosque. You know, they got some funds from Kuwait and they build this mosque. We don't go to the mosque because now they have gone from being Orthodox Sunni to now what you'll say Sally for Sally. So we're having that kind of problem, the extreme. I don't think they don't want to follow us. I mean, some of us, well, my husband, because like I said, a lot of them are brothers, so they're Bahamians like my husband, so they will talk, but they would not become Shias, but they maintain that respect. You're a Muslim, salam alaikum. They'll talk about what's going on in the country, politics, whatever, but that's as far as it goes. Okay, well, in the last 28 years, like I said, we used to come to Toronto. We always were invited to the Hajj conference. So I came here and I met a lot of sisters, brothers. 1984 was the first Hajj conference I came to. We will come here and, you know, you'll have a lot of the scholars from all over Turkey, Afghanistan, Iraq, all over. They will come here. So we'll come from all over the Caribbean, United States and Canada, come to the conference. So the friends that I've met during those times are the people I still stay in contact with. And then In the late 80s, I heard about the Hausa in Medina, and I went to the Hausa.
Okay.
So I stay in contact with one of my teacher. They had a Hausa there that was Shia, that was funded by some of the Shias had funded it, who were doctors and, you know, have those type of job. They funded, they bought a building and they funded the program. And from there you go to Iran to come to finish your studies. So I heard about it and I went there. I stayed 3 years.
Okay.
And another sister here that I'm still in contact with as well. Well, she stayed in Iran. She went to Iran. She spent like 15 years. I teach my children. The few of us, you know, the sisters, we'll have like every Sunday we'll have programs at each other's home.
Okay.
And I'll teach them what I've learned at the house.
Okay.
But then we will go through the books.
Okay.
And also, if I don't know something, I will contact my teacher. And then, you know, a lot of things are coming online live. So we start using the internet. We got a projector with a big screen. So we'll sit down and watch all the programs live so we could learn. It's my children, because alhamdulillah, I thank Allah for who we are. My husband and I are very strong, devoted Muslims, but when we educate our children about Islam, we made it fun. We made it a way of life that they can enjoy, you know. I mean, a lot of people, when they're dealing with Islam, they make it look like it's something rigid that you can't breathe. I give my children, you know, the age to grow. Yes, they're supposed to do hijab. I wait until they were baligh to do hijab, but before that, like a year or two before they become fully baligh, I start to introduce them to hijab and stuff like that. I teach them the basic concept of Islam, who the Imams was, who the Prophet, stuff like that. So I taught my children from the time they were like 18 months and up, basic things I start teaching. And they always saw us praying. We tried to do everything together. And we'll always talk. We had open forum in our house. It's not like we had the parents, so you're the children, so you can't ask us anything, you can't question. My children always question. And my daughter, alhamdulillah, the 33-year-old one, when they were old enough, when they started, like I said, when they were baligh, they're going to public school. They have to wear hijab. And I remember they're telling us, oh, my daughter couldn't wear hijab to school, you know. And I went straight to the government, to the Minister of Education, and I said, I'm a Muslim. My daughter has reached an age where she has to cover like me, so therefore, she has to be covered. And they allow us to cover, that she can cover. So we established that for all Muslims in the Bahamas who have girls, that when they reach baligh, that they will be able to wear hijab to school. So we set the precedent, and then all the Muslims started doing that. When my daughter started high school, she went through the same problem again. I had to go back again to establish that. So she was the first one to wear hijab in high school. And it was not a problem, because my children always look at Islam as their way of life. You know, it makes sense. They were always at the functions we go to. And now that they're older, they come to these conferences as well. And alhamdulillah, my daughter is a teacher, the oldest one. And the youngest one, she's into the technical stuff, into computers and stuff. But they both wear hijab. The thing about it is that in our family as Muslim, we all do hijab, the women, and we are educated women. We are out there wearing hijab. We are not compromising. We go out there, we set the president and who we are. This is who we are. This is what we're going to do. And this has nothing to do with our job. You either hire us the way we are or you don't hire us. Because even for going back to college, wanted to be a nurse, they're telling me I couldn't do my hijab. And I said, you know, it's either this or nothing. And I had to go back to the education, Ministry of Health as well, to be able to wear my hijab to work. And I'm the only Muslim woman who wear hijab as a nurse in the Bahamas. Well, now I see a doctor now wearing hijab, but most people come and they're afraid to wear hijab, but we always establish who we are. So alhamdulillah, you know, my children stay in the deed, and now we are raising the next generation of Muslims, my grandchildren. Alhamdulillah. Like I said, you know, you just deal with them like a regular family. You know, it's not, when my kids grow up, they want to play sports, but you know, you cover yourself as a Muslim. You want to, you know, be educated in this. Is it going to lead to haram? Okay, well, is that the best choice? We always let our children see the good and the bad. We're not going to say, no, you can't do this. This is not what I want you to do. Oh, no, you have to wear the hijab, you know, tie it up like a head tie or anything. No, you go out there and you demonstrate the best possible thing. Allah goes with you. And when they go out and they stand up for an interview and they speak intelligently and intellectually and articulate themselves in who they are, people are saying, oh, I didn't know Muslim women do that, you know, because my family in the Bahamas is like the role model for all, because we paved the way without having to compromise, because we didn't have to compromise. When you compromise is when the non-Muslims lose respect for you, because they know that you're supposed to do this or that, you know. Right now we may have a little problem because of the American influence on tourism in our country, and they need the money, so they dictate the kind of political behavior of our country. So every time they have something going on with America in some Muslim country, oh, you know, terrorists, this and that, you know, you may hear some little snide remarks. But other than that, we have our freedom to practice our religion. That's the reason why I tell my children to enjoy it while they can, because they have the freedom to practice, you know. So try and carry themselves, demonstrate, utilize all that they have now, because there will come a time that we will not have this kind of freedom to do it. So now that, and it's amazing because myself and my two daughters, you know, we demonstrated anywhere we go, because my daughter is, like I said, a teacher, so she come in contact with hundreds of students, and they're like, you know, when they see my daughter, and she's about this high, and, you know, she's teaching adults your age and mine, and I didn't know Muslim women can do that. And they admire her. It's how, like I said, that's how you go out and present yourself. And I always try to present myself the best way to my children growing up so that they will emulate me, you know, not being hypocritical. I'm not saying I'm without sin, but I try to live what I believe. So that's what they see in their parents. So it's, I guess that's why they stay in the day. Actually, my husband is the one who is more involved with Ahubai TV. You know, he's the one who will say, he told me, oh, this is Ahubai TV, you need to go online, and he'll tell me where to go. And I sat down and I listened to quite a few of your programs. Actually, I called from the Bahamas at one time. Sister Zara was there. And oh, we have a sister from the Bahamas online, you know. So I was just hailing them, actually. So I met Rebecca last year. She was giving a speech at Muslim Congress. So that's how I met her. And tried to stay in contact. But my husband is the one who have more of a relationship, because he, between Press TV and, you know, that's his life. So I just listen while he has it on and listen, and I get to see you sometimes and see Rebecca and see Sister Sarah and the other sisters. And we learn from that, and we keep updated by all the stuff you have to say and when you're raising your funds and all that. So. Like a godly background, so it was easy for me to accept Islam because of that, you know, because of the moral upbringing we had and the sense of knowing that there is a God. So For me, it was easy. We didn't have much Muslims around us. In Barbados, there are a Muslim community which is predominantly Indian. When I first knew, but there wasn't much black people, and when the handful of black people that I knew who introduced me to Islam, we came into Islam because there was a group that came to Barbados from the States that called themselves the Islamic Party. So we became part of that. Yeah, I never really see Islam as anybody's religion. It was just everybody had their own type of religion that they were practicing. 29 anyway. Well, I did elementary and part of high school there. And I went to Barbados. I grew up there, but finished my education in the Bahamas. I was an Anglican. My family is Anglicans. But at the age of 11, I was always challenging about, how could God be three? My parents was like, what's wrong with you? But I was always questioning who Allah was. And when I was like around 18, 19, I met this Muslim brother while I was living in Barbados, and he's who introduced me to Islam. So I became Muslim. I was involved in things like the Black Power movement and, anything to do with freedom and, that kind of stuff. And when I became Muslim, my family didn't like that at all. So, I was in Barbados. So I really didn't see it as a Indian religion or black people religion or whatever. It's just that when the brothers started talking to me about Islam, and I started doing my own research, I realized it was the truth, and this is what I wanted to do, and then I do it, So it was no part of any, racial divide or any Pacific of anything. I think because with my background, I did a lot of reading, in those days you read a lot about the Middle East, you read about their politics, their religion, but I never got it in the sense that it belonged to one group of people. So it didn't really affect me in that sense. I just see it as, okay, this is Islam and this is sound good, This is what I've been looking for. Allah is the only God, and He's Well, I was born in a small island in the Caribbean called St. Vincent, and I grew up in Barbados, and then I came to the Bahamas the last 29 years, but I was a Muslim for the past 33 years. When I first became Muslim, I became Muslim under the Sunni Madhab. And that was like 33 years ago. Wow. And then I became Shia 28 years ago. Going like the black sheep of the family still is, because now I'm Shia. And I just wanted to know how three is one, because if Allah is the creator of Jesus, now how could Jesus and the Spirit be God when God is the creator of both the Spirit and Jesus? But I did not know anything about Islam then. It was just a question in my mind at 11. Sure. So, because of my own search, I wanted to know. That is why it was so easy for me to accept Islam when I was introduced to Islam. We grew up where we were growing up, well, most of my family, they're into Christianity, whether it's Baptist or, secular, like the Methodist, Anglican, Catholic. But we were always dealing with God in our family, our whole immediate home and all that. So we always have